So in the past couple of weeks, I've played with Cursor AI and I find it to be an amazing tool because I don't know how to write a single line of code, and yet I've been able to build a couple of different apps using this tool. So I decided to create this video to share some of my learning, some of the best practices, workflows, to make sure that whoever uses it become more efficient and more productive using this tool. So without further ado, let's go to Cursor AI and start learning how to use this tool. Okay, so the first thing I would recommend doing is going to cursor.com, cursor.com, and just download the tool itself to your computer. It's either you are using Windows, Mac, whatever, you can just download it to your computer. From a package perspective, what I use and I would recommend is start free, because you can just have a couple of different flow premium requests. And then when you start getting the hang of the application, you can go to Pro, which is $20 a month, and you get 500 fast premium requests per month. Now, the better you become, the more efficient you become in using the LLMs, the less fast premium requests you will need. So I would really recommend, again, playing a little bit, like figuring out things, understanding workflows, and then be able to start paying for the product itself. After you download it and install the tool, what you will get is this window. So in essence, this is the beginning of creating a project. What you can do is open a project. When you open a project, just find the right folder on your computer. For example, for me, it's document, Cursor tutorials, and then you will start a new folder. Let's call this one starting, and select the folder. And this opens up your project. So we just picked a folder that from now on, every single file that we will create within this application will be saved locally on this folder. Now, the next thing I would recommend doing is actually start with the settings. So you can press Ctrl+Shift+J or just go to this setting icon. And here, what I will start with is the models themselves. So if it's not checked, I will make sure that I have Claude 3.7, the thinking model. You can use other models, but for me, most of the times I'm just using this one and sometimes O3 Mini. Once I make sure that I have the right models, I will go to rules. Now, rules, it's like a system prompt message for the LLM that you are working with. So if you want to have a very generic LLM that you are working with, that's cool. You don't need to add anything here, but I would recommend using very targeted and focused rules for your project. So if you go to cursor.directory/rules, you will find a lot of different rules that other people have created in the past for many different coding languages. So for example, because I will use React, I can go and find different rules that people have created before. So that's the first rules that you can integrate. Then if you scroll down, there are extra rules. This is project rules. So this is for all of your applications. So every single folder you will start on Cursor, these rules will be applied for every single message. But if you want to have a very specific rules for a specific project, then you can create new rules for this specific project. So what you will do is you will give it a name, for example, my rules. And then here you can give a description of what this specific rule is helpful for, what it's helping you doing. So for example, this is how I want the LLM to work with me, or something similar, right? And then here you will write all of the different rules you want to integrate into the project. What I'm doing is that every time I'm seeing something, I'm learning something. So for example, for the backend, for the database, I work with Supabase. So every time I need to change the tables, or maybe it's the functions in the database, what I need to do is I need to create a migration file. So it's a file that we literally send or integrate into the database, which tells the database, create this table with those columns, or create these functions that are related to this table. So if we just use a lot of them, the project itself becomes pretty chaotic. So something I noticed is if I want that every single time we create a migration file, instead of creating a new one, I will update the one before, then I can write it here. And then every time I have a migration file that needs to be updated, I'll just reference my rules in the project, and I'll show you how to do it pretty soon. So whenever I start a new project, the first thing I do is I start a new folder. I'll call it docs. And in this folder, I'll create a new file. I'll call it mvp.md, a markdown file. So one of the things I found out building a couple of different apps is that the planning phase is probably 60 to 80% of the work you will do across building your app. It's an extremely important phase of building your app, because if you really know what you are trying to build and you dive deep into what are all of the different processes, the UX, the different systems, the different features, and how they are working inside the application, it becomes extremely efficient working with the LLM, building the application, and at the same time there is a lot of clarity in your mind and the LLM when he's building the application. If you want to use this template, I have this in my school community where you can learn how to build application with Cursor, build AI agents with N8N, and even how to market them and reach clients and users. So you can check the link in the description below. So the way I'll do it, I'll just copy and paste it here, and I'll start explaining how I'm building this. So first of all, I just build a very basic project here, but I always start with core philosophy. So it's like I want the LLM to really understand what we are working on and what is important for me when we are building the project. For example, Goal Break exists to help users transform goals into achievable tasks through simple planning and tracking. So I'll start by writing what are the core philosophies. Simplicity first, and then I'll break what simplicity first means. Minimal features, maximum clarity, intuitive interfaces with few steps, focus on essential functionality only, reduce overwhelm through guided simplicity. So that will be the first section of my overview. Once I finish with this, I'll go to the core functionalities of the application. So I'll start breaking those down, like the user authentication, the goal management, task breakdown, progress tracking. And for each and every one of them, I will start thinking and breaking down what are the different processes that happens within this core functionality. For example, if it's user authentication, I want user to be able to sign up and log into the application, to reset their password, or to log out from the application. If it's goal management, I want the user to be able to create a new goal with a title and targeted date. The user can view all of their goals on a dashboard. The user can edit goals. The user can mark a goal as complete, or user can delete the goal. So that's how I will build the core functionalities system. Then I will start talking about the user interface and experience. So this, in essence, this part, the core functionalities, this is the backend. Those are the systems that I will have in the backend of the application. Now, in the front end, I want to understand which pages I want to create. What do I want to have on those pages? For example, the auth pages, the dashboard, the goal detail page, the goal creation page, task management within a goal page. Then, in each and every one of them, if there are specific way I want the application to look like, or specific elements I want to have on this page that trigger specific processes, then I will write it down here. Dashboard focus, goal details view. Then I will go into the key user flows. So this is sort of like the product management of building this application. So I want to understand what they will have in the first time experience, or what is the flow to create a goal, or what is the daily usage pattern, how they will use the application on every single day. And this is an assumption, but we need to start from a specific point to launch the MVP so we can gather data, feedback, and then start iterating from that point. And in the end, I'll just finish with the tech stack itself. What do I want to use for the backend, and what do I want to use for the front end? So now that we have went over creating the MVP and planning, let's understand the composer itself. So this is the chat interface here on the left side of the screen. Maybe when you started the application, it was on the right side. You can change it in your settings. For me, it's just simpler like this. You have a couple of different elements in this window. The first one is you can change which mode you want. So you want to work with an agent. The agent itself will run the code building for you. Then you can choose the model itself. Again, I will choose Claude 3.7. Now, there are a couple of important things that I want to point out at this point. So one of the amazing features Cursor AI have is that you can use different references within the messages you are sending the agent every single message. For example, as you can see here, I'm referencing my MVP plan. So if I'll send him a message, he will be able to go to this MVP document and actually read it. So from my perspective, this is an amazing function because many times you will want to integrate new features. Let's say you want to have an API call to OpenAI, or you want to have an API call to Claude, or you want to connect a database using Supabase. So each of those platforms provide a complete documentation on how to do it. And I think that most times I felt that the agent knows what he's doing, but because there is a lot of different versions of different tools in the tech stack, so Node.js can be in one version, and then the TypeScript can be in another version, and React can be in a different version, and all of this makes pretty mess when the LLM doesn't have the right documentation to work with. So what I found really effective is to use the docs function. So what it means is that, let's say you have a documentation that you want to reference for the LLM. So let's say that you are here in OpenAI and you want to tell them how to create chat completions. You can just copy the link for this page, and if you go and do add docs and you create a new document, you can just paste the link, and that will create a complete document in the application that you can reference at every single time. So that will be, for example, OpenAI chat completions, right? And you can use this as a reference every single time now in your docs in the application. So as you can see, I uploaded many of them. So I would really recommend adding those documents to be able to work with them long term. On top of it, there are a couple of other things you can use. So whenever you need, you can upload an image. So let's say you have ran the code and now you found the problem in the console or in the terminal. So you can just take a picture of this thing and you can paste it here, and that will work. And I will show you soon how you can do it. So when you start working with the LLM, what I really recommend doing is using the plan. So always have a plan of what you are doing. So for example, when we start building the MVP, what I will use as the prompt for the LLM is, I want you to check the MVP file and let me know what we are building. So I'm using this specific prompt because I want to have this chain of thought. So first of all, I want the LLM to fully understand what we are building, to see that we are on the same page. If we are on the same page, then I'll tell him to start building. Now, what I found is that those LLMs they have some intelligence, but they are not that intelligent, so they won't be able to run on a lot of different tasks. So I will be very focused on which tasks I'm giving them at every single time. So instead of working on big complex tasks, I will chunk those down into smaller tasks, and every time we will build one element or one feature or even sub features in the application. So for example, now I'll just go over it real quick to see that me and him are on the same page, and if we are, I'll just start running and building this application. Okay, amazing. So because I don't have any knowledge in code and me and him are on the same page, I'll show you what I will do at this point to make sure that we're implementing it phase by phase and not just dump everything to him and tell him like, start building this app. So I will tell him, can you build a plan for us to be able to work with to build this app? Okay, so as you can see, it's pretty amazing because now I have a complete plan phase by phase of what I need to do when. Of course, I don't care about like the daisy setup. It's like sending an API request for an LLM, but now I understand that first it will be best if I'll start with environment setup, then I'll use the Supabase configuration, which is the database, then the project structure, then I will integrate the authentication system, the goal management system, the task management system, progress tracking, and then some refinement to the user experience, and then we can start testing and doing QA. So what I'll ask him to do now is, can you please move this plan to a markdown file that we can then reference and work with. So I will literally ask him to create for me, just like we created this MVP MD file, I'll ask him to create this file for me. He will probably save it here somewhere. I will move it to my docs. And when I have this file, I can reference it Amazing. So he created this entire document, and I did it because if the conversation becomes too long, or if I want to create a new composer, so I can just go here and create a new composer, because when the conversation becomes too long, it's extremely hard for him to stay on top of what we're doing. So I found that if you solve couple of, like if you build a feature, solve couple of problems, everything is working, then move to a new composer and start working on a new feature or a new problem that you want to solve. So, and of course you can check your history, right? And you can just go back and see all of the conversation you had in the past. So from my perspective, at this point, I created this document because now I can always reference this document. So the velo, right? So now I have this development plan. It will be here. I can work with them on this plan to build my application. And then it will make it much easier because now I can just tell him like, great, let's start building the application using the plan phase by phase. So now it will start downloading all of the different things he needs for the setup and for the configuration of the application. So I'll just fast forward this process. So as you can see, one of the main things I got here is that the file we started had a capital S and we can no longer contain capital S. So what I will do is I will literally highlight this and press add to chat, and it will add this to chat, and then I'll send this again, knowing that he can now see the terminal. Now he can see those lines and make sure that he also adjusts the content that he's writing or the commands that he is writing based on this. So if I'll run it again, probably we'll have the same mistake. Yes, yes, no. So as you can see, what it is, it created a new folder called goal break, and then he started creating all of the different files in this folder. So now I'll just fast forward for the moment he's create everything. Okay, so as you can see, it's pretty amazing. So he already started doing, he already completed all of those tasks. So he did the project setup, he did basic UI components, he created interfaces for the user, goal and task, created Supabase database type definitions, utility functions, and even told us what are the next steps for the project. And for now, he have launched the local host. So let's open it to see what we have so far. So that's pretty nice. I guess we won't be able to yet like sign up. So my name is Sefy. Okay, let's create an account. Yeah, so nothing yet happened. Let's go back. Probably because we need to first set up the database. So I'll just continue. Great. Let's continue to the next phase. If there is something I need to do, please let me know. So sometimes we will need to do things like going to the Supabase, opening an account, getting the API keys or the URL, for example. So yeah, sometimes I'll just ask him, let me know what I need to do, and he's probably gonna start doing all of those things and tell me in the end. So I'll just, again, fast forward to see what we get from phase 2 of our plan. Okay, so everything looks great. He created the authentication system, and now I want to introduce another thing that you can use when you are building the application. So for example, now as you can see, we had this problem where the toast component is not longer with us and we need to use the Sonar one, right? So what I'll do here, I can just do add and terminals, and I can find this one, add toast, add toast. And I can tell him, check this out, we had a problem here, and send it to him. So as you saw, I just saw what we can see in the terminal, and then he could just figure out what's the problem and solve this problem. So before we continue to phase number 3, I want to introduce another way of working with Cursor, and specifically with Cursor and Supabase, which Supabase is the database that we will be using for the application building. And I think that this one is very important. So first of all, I'll tell you a story about the mistakes I did with this. So what happened to me was that I started building the application and I used Cloud Supabase. And what happened was that I didn't have the right cache or cookies, which means that every time I needed something from the database, I used to just send a request, like an API request to the database. What happened was that I had this loop in my onboarding in my first application that just re-rendered the page and sent again and again and again and again those API calls. So when I use Supabase, you have a limit of how many, I think 8 million calls that you can use. And it literally used all of the 8 million calls. And I didn't even know that he's doing it. I didn't understand it back then. So what I found out to be best is to use Supabase locally, and then you don't really send API calls to the cloud. You don't need to pay anything. You can just use the Supabase client. To install the Supabase client, what you need to do is you need to download to your computer a Docker. So it's pretty simple. You just go to docker.com and you can download this and install it on your computer. After you install it, what I would recommend doing is going back here and telling the LLM, I want us to use Supabase client, Supabase CLI using Docker. Can you set it up? And that's it. Like, I will just use this prompt and let it do the entire work once I have the Docker on my computer, and they will probably sync together. So I'll let it run and I'll come back when it's finished. Okay, perfect. So now it's working, and if you go to Docker, what you will find is the Supabase Studio starting, so the name of the project. If you click on it, you will literally get a duplicated page just like you will have in Supabase, where you can see all of your tables and everything related to your project. So now in essence, we can go back to Cursor and tell him, okay, great, the Supabase CLI is working well, and I'll do another thing. So he already created those files. So usually it will be in the name of the name of the project. Then if you go to Supabase, you have this folder called migration. So those are the migration files. Those are .sql. So what I'll do is I'll copy this and I'll go to the SQL editor. In the SQL editor, I'll just use the query. Control A, I'll just paste it here and run it. Okay, success, no errors, and I'll take that second file he created. So this one is empty. Great. So now in essence, if I'll go back here and I'll check the tables, you see I have tasks, I have goals. So now this file created those two. Now, because I already forgot what we were working on and everything, what I'll do at this point, for example, because we had a lot of things going, okay, great, it's working. Now I want you to check based on the initial plan we had, what we did and what are we missing. Don't continue working. Just let me know where we are. So I'm literally gonna use this prompt from time to time. I really want to stress how important it is to understand all the time where you are on this process, so you're able to understand what's going on in the back end of the application building and literally knowing exactly what you want the LLM to focus on next, because you are the operator. So if you just let it run and do stuff, you will find yourself building an app with a lot of problems that you don't know how to fix. But if you are all the time on top of what you're trying to create and making sure that you know exactly what is the next step, it becomes extremely efficient to do so. So now that he tells me, okay, we have the project setup, we have authentication system, where we are now, we need to implement some operations, connect the data batch to fetch real goals, the goal management UI, and the dashboard functionalities. What I also noticed is where I went here in Supabase, I saw that there is no profile. So there is no profiles table. So I'll literally go and say, I also saw that we don't have a user profile table in Supabase. So let's work on this as well as continue to phase 3. So I let it run and I'll come back when it's ready. I'll see you in a second. Okay, so we finished this and I want to start the application and see where we are. So I'll open a new terminal here. I'll make sure that we are in the right folder. So I'll do cd goal break because this is where we actually are. I'll write npm run dev, that will load the server. I see that 300, okay. So I'll just open it and let's see what we have. Okay, get started. And we have this problem. So if I'll go to, I'll press F12, go to the console, and I just get this re-rendering of the homepage. So I can just go here and literally like, okay, terminal, and I have node, this one what we are working. As you can see, the page keep on rendering, please fix it. So it's pretty amazing that I can just go there and tell him like, hey, here's a problem, can you go and check? And what it does, it's literally going to the different pages that it created for us, search for the problem, find the problem, and then solve the problem. So the way I see myself, and probably you should see yourself working with those AI tools, is you are the operator. In essence, you have higher intelligence and you can tell him and direct him what to do without having to master building code. I think that it is important to understand, like the different ways to learn what you have in the application, like the API routes or the migration file work, so you can become more efficient and effective in building the app and save yourself time so you can launch more product, build more apps, serve more people. But in essence, the way I see it is like, I don't really need to learn code to build an MVP, launch an MVP, and even get clients. Maybe when I will want to scale more than, 10,000 clients, I will hire someone to help me. But up until this point, we can build an application without knowing how to code, which is mind-blowing because that was a dream of mine for a long time, and now it's actually doable. Okay, so now I want to show you how I will solve this problem. So I have this system that I'm using. So first of all, I'll describe the problem. So the idea here is to work with chain of thought. So I want to build a chain of sort of like a thinking process of how we should work on solving this problem. So first, I want him to not just solve this specific problem. Yes, of course, I want him to solve the problem, but I want him to have enough information to be able to understand and connect where this problem comes from the entire app. So first thing I will tell him is, one, scan the complete code so you will have the understanding. So what I asked him is to first scan the complete code. After the scan, find potential problems, why we have the render problem. And then after you find those problems, remove all of the assumptions and stay with the facts. I don't want him to have many assumptions of why it happens. I want him to find the actual facts of why we have the problem in the application. And then I just want him to present the information to me, because sometimes he will run and take actions where he will solve this problem but create new problems by, destroying functions or utilities in the application that you think is very important for the functionality of the application. So I will ask him to scan the code, find the problem, remove assumptions, stay with the fact, and then present the information. So then I can decide if the way he thinks he should solve this problem is correct or not. If I think that by solving this problem he will destroy something else, I will move him toward like at least telling him so he knows that if he solves this problem, I don't want him to solve it by hurting other functions or utilities in the application. So I'll just go over it real quick. Now, once I understood what is the problem, I'll just ask him, okay, how can we solve it with a simple solution? Sometimes like those AI agents or like Claude 3.7 loved the over complexity. And I just want it to be simple solution. It's an MVP and we don't want to go and build everything around a problem and now have tremendous amount of code that we don't really need in the application. So I'll just ask him to do so, and great, go and fix it. And I'll see you once they fix it. Okay, so I reran it a couple of times, and now when I sign in, it works. From time to time, because I use the turbocharge, you can see here problems. So what I did is I just used this, saw the problem. There is a copy button. I copied, I pasted it in the chat, send it. He started fixing it. And for now, everything looks good. I'm in the dashboard. I'll create my first goal. Okay, whatever. Learn Spanish. Description. Become sufficient in Spanish in 3 months. And target date, this is nice. Like whatever, here, create goal. We have a problem creating the goal. So role level security policy. So again, I'll just take it, I'll drop it here, and I'll send it here. He will start working on this. But in essence, as you saw, like this is the process. You will start creating things. It will create everything for you. There is a sign up, there is a login, there is a profile. I can paste like my avatar URL, display name, my email, and I can tell like, hey, I want them to be, the user to be able to change his email. He will be able to change his email. I can even take an image of this and tell him like, hey, I want you to remove the sign out from the menu and move it to the profile page. And it will start doing this action by action. So from my perspective, this was a great demonstration because we had so many problems during the process, and it was not a perfect process because no one will have a perfect process every single time he's building an app. So in this video, we saw how to start from scratch, how to set up your environment, how to work with plans, how to build the MVP. And then we found different problems in the process, and we started solving them, from working with Supabase client with a Docker, installing the migration files in the SQL, so you have all of those tables in Supabase. So I think that in essence, this is what you need to understand as a beginner working with Cursor AI. If you have any questions, just let me know in the description below. On top of it, again, if you want to learn how to use those tools to create applications and then market them and find clients, come to our school community. We are building this ecosystem of powerhouse of entrepreneurs who are building those businesses, helping each other, growing together, solving problems together. And every single week we have 2 meetings, one where we sit and build AI agents to automate everything in the business, as well as one meeting where we build application, and it's live. We do it together. I see it just like you saw in this video, just like live, and we are building application together, finding mistakes, finding problems, solving problems. And yeah, that's it. I hope this helps, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.